And I want to talk a little bit about the diet options. How many people are doing GFCF? Great. And how many people are doing SCD, the specific carbohydrate diet? All right, great. Is anybody doing the Body Ecology diet or the Feingold diet? Okay, so we have mostly GFCF people and a few SCD people, and a few people came up to my booth before the talk today and asked about the specific carbohydrate diet. So I want to talk a little bit about that to some of you that maybe have been doing GFCF or some of you that are just curious about that. So GFCF is gluten-free, casein-free. Gluten is the protein in wheat, rye, barley, spelt, kamut, and some other grains. Casein is the protein in dairy. And if you can see on the right-hand side, the list of the ARI results. So Autism Research Institute polls all their parents to find out who has results from which diet, supplement, and medication. And so you can see the diet results on the right-hand side. And you can see consistently, no matter what diet people choose, diet ranks 50%, 65% improvement no matter which diet you choose. So diet really can be very helpful. Food eliminations, other food sensitivities would be soy, corn, citrus, peanuts, chocolate, some of those ingredients. Feingold diet, this is reducing the phenols and salicylates. Those are both artificial in the artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives, and also naturally occurring in things like salicylates. And those would be grapes, apples, berries. There's a whole list actually in my book, so even if you just want to come by and peek at the list, you might be interested to see, wow, my child is really almost addicted to 5 or 6 fruits in this category. Maybe there's something going on with that sulfation pathway that I might want to look into. The specific carbohydrate diet, this diet eliminates complex starches and sugars and it helps to break the inflammatory cycle that's created from feeding those bad bugs. The Body Ecology diet, this is a diet where they add a lot of good fermented foods and other dietary principles originally created for yeast overgrowth, so it can be helpful for that. Nourishing Traditions, or Weston A. Price, this is basically just a really healthy, nourishing type diet, and I often add principles of this to any diet that I'm helping parents with, and we're going to go into several of those nourishing principles in this talk today. And then the low oxalate diet. This is a diet that's fairly new. We're still looking for new information, but I do have some clients that have found some really helpful benefits from this diet. This is going to remove those sharp oxalate crystals that create kidney stones in some people, that create such painful passing of those stones. Those sharp crystals can create a lot of inflammation, and so that's what that diet is all about. So a little bit on the benefits of these diets. So the gluten and casein-free diet is often a great place to start. It helps remove some of those really inflammatory proteins and remove those foods that can create opiates for some children. So that you can actually test the urine and find a large percentage of children with autism actually don't break down these proteins into amino acids, but just break them down into large protein chains that can actually mimic opiates in the brain, and so it would be like being on morphine or heroin all the time. You might be spacey, tired, foggy, irritable, those sorts of things. And so GFCF is often a great place. It's kind of a good foundation to start with. And then people might add on the principles of removing some of these other foods like the soy or the corn and things like that. The Feingold diet is often great for people that have a lot of preference, almost addiction. So one of my clients, for example, the grocer knew the husband and wife, not because they ever came in together, because they were the only people in the neighborhood, because I live in San Francisco, but we have these little neighborhood markets, so it's much more like a small town. And so when every time the parents came in, they would buy huge bags of apples, and 17 apples at a time. And a couple days later, would come back again to get more, because their child would eat sometimes upwards of 5, 6, 7 apples a day. And that's just an example of, or I have one family that I know where their daughter only drinks apple juice all day long. So you can start to look at some of those things and think, why is that happening? Often when you have a reaction or a response like that, almost an addictive response, it's because the body can't break it down properly and often creates almost like drugs on the brain, and then you often get sort of addicted to those foods and want them all the time. So be aware of any foods, and that's one of the things that when you look at all the charts in the back of my book, you can look at glutamates and salicylates and oxalates and things and start to see if there's any area that has a pattern developing, and that's often a good place to look and start maybe removing some of those and seeing what you find. Hyperactivity, irritability, red cheeks, red ears, aggression, those are some of the common signs that parents talk about with the phenols and salicylates. The specific carbohydrate diet's great for gut inflammation and a lot of imbalanced gut flora, so bad bacteria, yeast overgrowth, not enough good bacteria. This diet is often really helpful for chronic diarrhea, things like that. The Body Ecology diet, again, is a diet that's often used for candida and supplying that good bacteria. The Weston A. Price, very nourishing diet, and the low oxalate diet. This is actually can affect so many different areas, and it can be anything from helping with stimming. So one of my clients was doing kind of a modified SCD, Body Ecology, and every time they made some changes, they saw improvements, but one symptom that remained was stimming, that her son would rock in the corner for about 45 minutes after every meal. And literally, when she remembered back to the specific carbohydrate diet, the very beginning phases, she did an intro diet where there weren't a lot of fancy, in this case, I was going to say fancy foods, but in this case, oxalates, and her son did really well. So when she took out those oxalates, literally within if not overnight, within days, his stimming was dramatically decreased. Now, I'm not saying all stimming is due to this, but that's just an example of how a food can create a dramatic response and how diet can really be really helpful.